lives, that will change history, 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 that will change history. That will be the most beautiful day.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in this evening for our Ukraine Nightly War Report for May 24th of 2022. Again, we had a 3-day weekend there. We're having a few connection problems here at the studio, and we're unable to bring you guys a report last night. So we're going to, again, get everybody caught up on what's been going on for about the past 12, 24, and dipping into the 48 hours as well, the past 48 hours of what's been going on, and some of the events also that occurred over the weekend. Again, really quickly, I'd just like to thank everybody that has decided to stop by tonight for tonight's report. Hello to everybody in the live chats. Hello to all of my mods, both in the live chats and over on the Discord server. Hello to everybody. Hope everybody is having a wonderful evening or morning if you are in Europe. It's currently 3 a.m. in Ukraine. If you're in Europe there, good morning to everybody. And if you're over here in the Americas, good evening to you all. We're going to start tonight's report, as usual, by going through our main headlines for about the past 12, 24 hours. Getting everybody caught up on kind of the key topic items here that have occurred over the past, again, 12, 24, but we'll kind of reach back into the weekend a little bit as well to cover some of the significant things that have happened over the past few days. Really quickly, if you haven't already, make sure to, as we're calling it now, Javelin. You got to Javelin the like button over there. Best way to get the algorithm's attention and get this information out to a lot more viewers. So, again, we're going to be starting with our main headlines. Then, as usual, we'll switch over into our community aggregated news from our Situation Room, from our Intel analysts over there on the Situation Room in our community Discord server, who are 24/7, hard at work, aggregating reports and information for not only these reports, but for our community. If you would like to access probably one of the best resources for keeping up to date, for getting up-to-date real-time information on what's going on in Ukraine, not just Ukraine, but this broader conflict now. Probably one of the best places to do that, one of the best resources is our Discord server, as discord.gg/Nemico. You can, again, find most of these reports that we'll be bringing you later in the show over in the Situation Room channel. Excellent resource for up-to-date reports on what is going on in this war. After all that, we'll be switching over into our open source reports coming from places like Live UA Map, which you can see on the screen behind me, amongst a few others. And then, of course, we'll end our show, like usual, with a little bit of a Q&A, questions and answers. I'll kind of talk to some of you guys in the chat, and we'll answer some questions. Again, thank you so much to everybody that is tuning in this evening. I hope I can be heard well. I think I got the gain set right now for the microphone, so I believe we are all ready to go. We're going to start tonight, again, going with our main headlines. The conflict in the east is rapidly escalating. Some intel reports we've gotten from the past 12, I would say, actually more like 24 to 48 hours now, again, have pointed towards that there's been a ramping up of this next phase, as they've called it, of Russia's special military operation in the east, as Putin, I think, kind of makes a mad dash to make some kind of gains here. There's been a sharp uptick in the amount of strikes, the amount of violence, the amount of movements we've seen from those Russian forces in the past, I would say, 24 to 48 hours, more so than we saw last week. There's quite a few reports that came out over today and yesterday speaking about this. Some U.S. Western intel analysts kind of been pointing towards it. Again, the dramatically ramped up the escalation there. The conflict there has been escalated dramatically in the past about 24 to 48 hours in the east specifically. As that occurs, again, signs are growing that the war could become a protracted stalemate, so to speak. Militarily, on almost every front, Russia has underachieved, while Ukraine has, quote, overachieved over the 3 months of the war. I believe that's a good way to put it. Again, both sides are now digging in, and neither appears capable of delivering a decisive blow against the other. Again, it's been very incremental and what analysts call anemic progress by those Russian forces there in the east as they take territory, and those Russian forces immediately take it back. There has been some areas where the the Ukrainian forces have been able to take large chunks of territory back from the Russian forces here in recent weeks. However, there are other areas where the Russian forces have been pretty stubborn and have been able to kind of hold their ground. And so, again, they're calling it kind of this a stalemate is what it's kind of looking like here. This kind of growing into as the weeks and months here go on. The prospect of a major Russian advance appears less likely, but the Russians now control an unbroken swath of Ukrainian territory from the Donbass region in the east to Crimea in the south. Again, we talked about this in our reports from last month and even the month before that was their main goal this whole time was really to get that land bridge connecting the Donbass to Crimea. And so they've now achieved that, especially with the full capturing of Mariupol. Again, it is confirmed Mariupol is under Russian control, 100% Russian control at this time. Again, Russian troops have captured 2 important southern cities. Again, you have Mariupol that I just mentioned, and then also Kherson. Again, cutting Ukraine off the Sea of Azov, so they no longer really have any territory control in and around the Sea of Azov there. And then their next move, and we've talked about this a few times, would be to push further westward towards Odessa. And we'll probably get to that a little bit more later in the show. Again, heavy fighting continues in the Donbass as Russian troops push to capture Severodonetsk and the area around it. Even at this hour, as I bring you this report, there is currently fighting occurring in those regions actively. Almost 6.6 million people have fled Ukraine during the war, but also more than 2 million Ukrainians have crossed into Ukraine. Queues have stretched for miles to get into the country from Poland. I know we've talked about this quite a few times when Mehmet went over the borders there, how busy it was originally and how busy it was when he came back over. But with people, instead of leaving, people were coming back into Ukraine. Again, those queues have stretched miles to get into the country from countries like Poland. Again, the biggest hub of Ukrainian refugees was there in Poland. Some Ukrainians are going back and forth to visit family who have fled Ukraine. Some return to cities that withstood Russian attacks, including the capital of Kiev, very much similar to how Mehmet went back to Kiev. Big shout out to him if he's tuning in this evening. Hoping to get him back on the show here in the coming weeks. Again, before we move on with those list of headlines, I have a report here to show you guys. I have a few things here to show you with tonight's headlines. So let's go over here and we'll take a look at this. I believe it was... Here we go. So we're talking about people fled. We're talking about how many people have fled. I would like to just go over some of the casualty numbers here for you guys, just so we can get kind of our... get our bearings straight here a little bit. Just really what the toll is, how much damage really has been caused here. Again, this is 3 months of Russia's war in numbers. This is directly from the Kiev Independent. What you can see on the screen behind me. Really quickly, I'll switch over to our big screen so we can see this here, front and center. Again, these are updated numbers. I guess this was posted Exactly 3 months ago, on February 24th, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, says from Kiev Independent here. Here's what it has cost Ukraine so far. Again, 2,500 to 3,000 Ukrainian troops killed, at least, and that's as of April 16th. So that's not even for the past month or so here. We're about a month behind on the Ukrainian troop loss numbers there. But these second two variables here, I think, are really eye-opening. There's been almost 4,000 civilians killed in Ukraine, and 234 children have been killed in Ukraine. 10,000 Ukrainian troops have been injured. 4,532 civilians have been injured. 13,073 Russian war crimes under investigation currently at this time, and 3,000 airstrikes have been conducted by Russian forces. Again, some very stark numbers there coming from the Kiev Independent. And really quickly here, I have another report here from the Kiev Independent. Again, this is also so what we just saw were casualty numbers. All right. What we're going to see here is territory control. Again, here's how the front line has been changing since February 24th. So this was, again, February 26th, 2 days after invasion. Again, the dark red color highlights the Ukrainian Crimea and parts of Donbass occupied by Russia since 2014. The light red color highlights the areas occupied by Russia after it began its all-out war on February 24th. Again, this is a source from Live UA Map 2 days after the start of the invasion on the 24th there. You can see in the light red the territory that they had begun to control. Again, this is the 24th of March. You can see here just the stark difference there between the territory control from the 26th of February to the 24th of March. This was the withdrawal from the north here. So you can see they had these areas in and around Kiev, Chernihiv, and then very quickly pulled out of the entire area here in the north. Again, this is what it looks like yesterday. This is what it looks like yesterday. This is where we're at in the east here. You have Mariupol under control, all the way over to Kherson. They're stretching westward. And you have the control in and around these eastern regions here in the Donbass. They have withdrew from Kharkiv. Again, all of these locations here in the north, most of which are still under bombardment. They're still being shelled and struck by missiles from across the border. Again, those are some pretty eye-opening statistics there. Some interesting data. Again, we'll cap off these few Kiev Independent reports here. I have today's, again, indicative estimates, as they're calling them, of Russia's combat losses as of the 24th May, again, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. 29,350 troops plus 150 Russian troop losses. I believe the plus means everything in the past 24 hours, if I'm not mistaken. Big shout out to Mehmet. I see you in the chat there tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. We were just talking about you a few minutes ago, and hope you're doing well. Hope you're hanging in there in Kiev. Again, 29,350 troops plus 150. And those are Russian troops lost. 1,302 plus 9 tanks. 3,194 plus 26 all personnel vehicles. 606 artillery systems, 201 MLRS systems. Those are multiple rocket-launched artillery systems. 93 anti-aircraft warfare systems, 205 planes, 170 helicopters, 13 boats, 480 unmanned aerial vehicles, those are drones, 43 special equipment, pieces of special equipment, 2,213 vehicles and fuel tanks, 1,112 cruise missiles. Again, we've seen quite a few images, I would say, since the war began, of captured equipment, destroyed equipment, entire convoys, miles and miles long, of tanks and all personnel carriers destroyed, absolutely destroyed. These estimates here that we see, again, indicative estimates as they're calling, are, I assure you, for the equipment, not far off from reality. Very, very close, very spot on, very accurate. Again, there's a lot of argument to the Russian troop losses. I've often told people the best way to get a good idea of what those are most likely at is to take what the numbers that the Ukrainians are putting out through sources like this, take numbers that the British intelligence is putting out, take what the numbers, NATO and their partner countries, all of them, U.S., and then also take the Russian numbers, what they're putting out, and then run your averages. That's probably the best way to get a good understanding of where these numbers really are. Again, very significant losses. That's almost 30,000 bodies, 30,000 Russian bodies. All right. Again, very heavy losses, arguably on both sides here. The Russians have definitely lost a heavier share of both equipment and personnel. Again, these numbers here are a little bit behind April 16th, so we do have some updating there to get with those numbers. I believe we could probably get you a more accurate assessment of this, but Ukrainian troops killed at least 2,500 to 3,000. So you can see when doing the comparison there, that the Ukrainians are doing a pretty good job of defending their country. I believe these numbers here are indicative of that, and arguably these maps here I showed you of how the territory control has shifted since the start of the war. I think that is also again, proof there in the pudding. Again, thank you to everybody that is tuning in this evening. We're currently going through our main headlines for this evening. We have one more main headline to bring you this evening, and then we're going to switch over to our community aggregated and our open source reports after that. Again, one of our last, I do have actually a few more I want to touch on. So I would say one of our last main reports here, and I've touched on this quite a few times over the recent weeks. Again, fears of a global food crisis are growing as the shock from the war added to climate change and rising inflation concerns. Again, Ukraine and Russia combined to produce 25% of the world's wheat, in addition to other grains and cooking oil, sunflower oil. Big one there. Disrupted exports are exacerbating food insecurity in Afghanistan, Somalia, Kenya, and many other countries worldwide. The United Nations has warned of the, quote, specter of a global food shortage in the coming months without urgent international action. Again, I've talked about this a lot on the reports over the past few weeks. Not only are we having a food crisis occurring in, again, countries where it already was unstable, but here in the U.S., in Europe, U.S., I would say all of the Americas were having increased food prices, right? Dramatic increase in food prices. This is due to a multitude of factors. One, already existing supply chain issues. All right, we've talked about that before. Two, the pandemic and that effect that it had on the economy and the supply chain. All right. Three, the climate crisis that is occurring, or arguably that many say is occurring. All right. Adding fuel to the fire, so to speak, you have the Russian war in Ukraine. Again, Ukraine has been said to be the world's bread basket, as they call it. 12% of your daily caloric intake. 12% of your daily calories. I'm talking to you, Mary. I'm talking to you, Mythical, I'm talking to all of you guys in the chat right now. 12% of your daily calorie intake comes from Ukraine. Right? The reason your food prices are higher now than they were back in February, in most regions in the world, is directly related to the war. All right? The reason those prices are increased is because that's 12% of your caloric intake that is not there right now. All right? That 12% we're seeing reflected right back in prices. Now, again, there is a lot of that is contributed to supply chain, to the climate issues that are occurring, right, which is making food production. It's causing problems for food production, right? It's making food production harder in many different countries. Okay, so you have that with supply chain issues, and then you have the pandemic and all of the problems that has come from that on the economy, causing this massive inflation of these food prices that we've seen over recent weeks. Again, many experts say that that's only going to increase over the summer. We might see that those prices come down late summer, possibly as this war hopefully comes to an end and resolves itself. As Tony Starks in the chat says, supply and demand. Exactly. Supply is currently diminished. Demand is currently up and growing. I would say almost exponentially. So yeah, it's quite a pickle we have gotten ourselves into here. That is without a doubt. A few other quick reports here. We have a few extra here that I believe would be viable. Henry Kissinger, again, a report from earlier today. This might have been released late yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Again, he says Ukraine should give up territory to Russia to reach a peace agreement. Again, Henry Kissinger, again, he's a German-born American politician and diplomat. Again, saying that Ukraine must give up land to Russia, and that is, he's speculating that is the only way that they can come to some sort of peace agreement. Again, that was a report from earlier today that broke. Again, in a report from the BBC earlier today, calling it just the beginning. Actually, there was the headline there. This is just the beginning. Everything is still to come. Again, I'll read you some from this article here, saying the Ukrainian army is under more pressure than at any time since the first desperate weeks after the Russian invasion. And when I opened this report tonight, I did mention that in the past 12, 24, 48 hours, we've seen probably the most active fighting in the East that we've seen since the start of this second phase, so to speak, some weeks ago. Okay, it could be fighting a losing battle in Luhansk, speaking to the Ukrainian army there, the northern part of the Donbass region. The Ukrainian General Staff says the Russians appear to be concentrating their forces for another push in that region. In the last day, the Russians have intensified their attacks across the Donbass front line, getting closer to completing the encirclement of Severodonetsk, a city of 80,000 people before the invasion. The Ukrainians, as usual, are fighting with stubborn determination. Reinforcements are being poured in to the battle. In just a few minutes, I saw about 20 armored personnel carriers with soldiers riding on them, driving to the front line, along with tanks on transporters and multiple rocket launchers. They have slowed the Russians down, but have not stopped the offensive grinding forward. The Russians are inflicting heavy casualties. Again, there are heavy casualties occurring on both sides of the front line in the east at this time, just to be clear on that. The fighting has escalated dramatically. Very bloody fighting that is occurring there in the east. at this hour. Again, in a report from kind of reaching back into the past 48 hours here, there's been a lot of news coming out of Hungary. And I thought it would be worth it to mention this at the end of our headlines here. Again, stay tuned. We're about to hop into our community aggregated reporting here in just a second. Again, in a report from Reuters earlier, Hungary's government will assume emergency powers in order to be able to respond more quickly to challenges created by the war in neighboring Ukraine. Prime Minister Viktor Orban said in a Facebook video on Tuesday, Orban, who won a fourth consecutive term in an election on April 3rd, has used the special legal order in the past, once due to Europe's migration crisis and later during the COVID-19 pandemic. The new state of emergency similarly empowers Orban's government to approve measures by decree. Quote, "The world is on the brink of an economic crisis," Orban also said in the video, reiterating that Hungary must stay out of the war in Ukraine and, quote, "protect families' financial security." Orban said his government's first measures would be announced on Wednesday. So coming up here tomorrow, Orban's government is having to deal with the consequences of the war in Ukraine, annual inflation of 9.5%, and a budget deficit that ballooned in the first quarter due to a pre-election spending spree. He also needs to avoid a marked slowdown in the economy. Again, they have declared a state of emergency over the war in Hungary and the economy. Not just the war, but the economic problems that are occurring there in Hungary as well. Again, that concludes our primary headlines for this evening. Really quickly, before we hop into our community aggregated stuff, I have a few reports here from the Institute for the Study of War. It came from today's Russian offensive campaign assessment. Actually, this was from the 23rd, so yesterday there. Again, this was from May 23rd from 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So that would have been 1 a.m. Ukraine time from yesterday. Russian nationalist figures are increasingly criticizing the failures of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine and are calling for further mobilization that the Kremlin likely remains unwilling and unable to pursue in the short term. Again, All Russian Officers Assembly, an independent pro-Russian veterans association that seeks to reform Russian military strategy, called for the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin to declare war on Ukraine and introduce partial mobilization in Russia on May 19th. The assembly said that Russia's special military operation failed to achieve its goals in 3 months, especially after the failed Svesky Donets River crossing. ISW previously assessed that the destruction of nearly an entire Russian battalion tactical group, BTG, during a failed river crossing on May 11th shocked Russian military observers and prompted them to question Russian competence. The Assembly's appeal called on Putin to recognize that Russian forces are no longer only denazifying Ukraine, quote there from, again, from the Assembly's appeal in Russia, but also Ukraine, but are fighting a war for Russia's historic territories and existence in the world order. The officers demanded that the Kremlin mobilize all regions bordering NATO countries, including Ukraine, form territorial defense squads, extend standard military service terms from 1 year to 2, and form a new supreme wartime administrations over Russia. The Donetsk, Luhansk People's Republics, DNR and LNR, and newly occupied Ukrainian settlements. The officers also demanded the death penalty for deserters. So some interesting moves happening there amongst Russian nationalist figures in Russia, amongst the Kremlin there. We're going to now switch over to our Situation Room over on the Discord server. Take a look at what some of our intel analysts, radar analysts, radio analysts, cyber analysts, and many more over there in the Discord server have been doing over the past 12 to 24 hours. Our first post from this evening Again, thank you to everybody that's tuning in tonight. Our first post from this evening comes from Kayuka. It was posted earlier today. Kayuka, a longtime contributor here. This is from War Monitor Ukraine on Twitter, talking about the 31st Guards Air Assault Brigade is reportedly supporting the 24th and 30th near Papsana. They are reportedly inflicting heavy losses on the Russian air assault units VDV. VDV tried to advance up a hill north of Volodymyrivka. They took heavy casualties and then retreated. Very interesting report there. Thank you, Kayuka, for posting this in the Situation Room. Our next post here comes from Common Fishbowl on the Situation Room here. This is posted by PBS NewsHour, talking about 200 bodies have been found in a Mariupol basement. Again, this is from Ukrainian officials. PBS is asking me if that's my favorite station. No, it's not my favorite station. All right. 200 bodies here, found in a Mariupol basement. Again, workers digging through the rubble of an apartment building in Mariupol found 200 bodies in the basement. And again, I want to reiterate, over the past month or so, I've been saying, after the steelworks factory is over, after that chapter of Mariupol was closed, that we were going to start seeing reports and images coming out of Mariupol exactly like what we're seeing now. Exactly like this. Okay? Again, they found 200 bodies. All right? Stuffed into a basement in Mariupol. Again, Ukrainian authorities said on Tuesday, a grim reminder of the horrors still coming to light in the ruined city that has seen some of the worst suffering of the 3-month-old war. Again, I've told people this multiple times. If you think what we saw in and around Bucha and Kiev was bad, I believe what we're going to see coming out of Mariupol is going to be, unfortunately, that much more worse. Just that much worse. Again, the amount of civilian casualties that have been reported out of that area, things like that we're seeing now here. Again, this report, 200 bodies. The bodies were decomposing, and a stench permeated the neighborhood, said Petro Androshenko, again, an advisor to the mayor. He said it's not clear when they were discovered there in Mariupol. Again, Mariupol was relentlessly pounded during a month-long siege that finally ended last week after some 2,500 Ukrainian fighters abandoned that steelworks factory. I've talked about that many times. Ukrainian authorities have said that at least 21,000 people have been killed and accused Russia of trying to cover up the extent of horrors by bringing in mobile cremation equipment. We've heard reports of that many times. They've also alleged some of the dead were buried in mass graves. We've seen satellite photos. I've showed you satellite photos last week of those mass graves outside of Mariupol. Strikes have also hit a maternity hospital. We reported on that when that happened. And a theater where civilians were sheltering. We reported on those very unfortunate deaths there of those civilians that were sheltering in that theater when that occurred as well. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russians of waging what we call, again, total war, seeking to inflict as much death and destruction as possible on his country. We've talked about the idea of total war before. Again, not seen since the days of World War II. Absolutely destroying not just military targets, but civilian infrastructure targets as well, and directly targeting civilians as well, on top of that. Our next post here comes from V. It's just V, is his name on the Situation Room. Thank you so much, V, for posting this. This comes from MSN.com. Talks about Russian TV says nuclear war only alternative to Russia's victory in Ukraine. Again, new threats of a nuclear strike were made on Russian state TV. As a head of state-controlled Russia Today, RT, we talked about them many times, Margarita Simeonian, I'm not sure if I'm saying that, said on air that the war in Ukraine will either end with Russia's victory or a catastrophe for all of humanity. Again, quoting there from this report saying, they all believe we will definitely lose and the West will definitely win. Somalian said, they say this not understanding that it's impossible. It's just not possible. It will not happen. Either this ends badly for all of humanity or we win. There is no third option. It's not the first time Somalian made a nuclear threat on air. In late April, the RT editor-in-chief said that British support of Ukrainian strikes on Russian soil is leaving Moscow short of options besides the, quote, complete destruction of Ukraine and a, quote, nuclear strike. Again, I've reported quite a few times on this rhetoric that has been coming out of the Kremlin. Our next post this evening comes from Lords of Acid, a longtime contributor. Lords of Acid, thank you so much for posting this on the Situation Room. This comes from Alex Kocharov. Again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. According to BBC Russian, 3 sources in Russia confirmed the death of a retired one-star general, Kanamat Botashev, who had been piloting Russian Su-25 over Luhansk region in the eastern Ukraine, where his aircraft had been shot down. So again, he was a retired one-star general that was fighting in Ukraine for Russia. He was operating a Russian Su-25. And the participation of such a high-ranking officer in air battles can speak both of how difficult tasks Russia sets for military pilots in its war in Ukraine, or the lack of highly qualified fighter jet pilots that they have at their disposal. That was that comment there left below. Again, very interesting report there. We're now going to switch over to our open source reporting. Again, I would like to just thank everybody that posted reports in the Situation Room today. There's many more to go through. We don't have time every night to go through all of them, but again, I would like to just thank all of you for putting in the time to share those reports and that information in the Situation Room. We're now going to go to our live UA map here. We're going to give it a little bit of a refresh. We're going to scroll down to the past 12-hour mark, about the 12-hour mark. We'll start here at the 10-hour mark here. Again, 10 hours ago, destruction in Le Mans as a result of Russian shelling. I just want you guys to take a look at this picture here. What do you see? I don't know about you guys, but this doesn't look like a military facility to me. Does this look like a military building? Possibly, maybe. I don't know. Actually, now I see this tower here. But to me, it looks like a residential building. I don't know. Does this look like a military building to you guys? I don't think this is a military building. I believe this is a residential building here. Many residential buildings here we're seeing in a row. The destruction to those buildings. Again, what caused this destruction in Le Mans? It was a result of Russian shelling. Again, you can see tearing these buildings here to shreds. These aren't military buildings, you guys. These are residential targets here. Early in the war, there's a lot of hearsay. People saying, okay, there's Ukrainian forces in those buildings, right? They're firing on Russian forces. They're using these buildings as firing positions. That is occasionally the case. There are areas where civilians have fled, and those Ukrainian forces do take up positions in a civilian building, to fire on Russian forces. But it's become apparently clear, right? Extremely clear over the past few months that the Russian forces in many areas, many regions of Ukraine are directly targeting civilian buildings. Not just indirect. This isn't just indirect fire here hitting these buildings. In some cases it is. In some cases, again, when you're shelling places, there is a little bit of room for error. They're not exact, precise weapons. It's not precision missiles here. These are artillery shells. But again, in the volume that we've seen these strikes occur on residential buildings like this, it becomes extremely clear that they're directly targeting these sites and these buildings. Again, they're not just waging a war on Ukraine's government at this point. All right, they're not just waging a war on Ukraine's military at this point. They're waging a war on Ukraine's infrastructure. Okay, it is housing, it is power. Okay, it is businesses. All right, it's farms. All right, they are directly targeting the very infrastructure of Ukraine, the economy of Ukraine. They are targeting it directly. All right, destroying its ability to have business, all right, to have an economy, to have schools, to have housing, right, to have resources like water, electricity, and heat. That is what they are targeting here, all right. And again, sorry to go on kind of a rant there about this this one report, but again, this is just a very blaring example of what we see not every day, but almost every hour coming out of Ukraine. Strikes like this. Tony Wilson says crystal clear after the Russians hit a hospital for the 40th time. Exactly. What we're seeing here is not a war being waged against Ukraine, not their government, not their military. It's a war being waged against the people of Ukraine and the infrastructure of Ukraine specifically. If Russia can't have Ukraine, I know we just talked about the nuclear threats that they're spewing on Russian TV. If they can't have Ukraine, all right, at the very least they need to destroy Ukraine and they need to render Ukraine landlocked. Again, taking the southern coast, possibly over to Odessa. They will annex territory. They will absorb territories that they've taken, right, into Russia. But if there is any way that Russia backs down from this war, it's with Ukraine totally in rubble, all right, totally destroyed, in shambles, all right. They like to toss around the rhetoric of nukes, the nuclear threat, right, the nuclear option. Again, I think that's mainly rhetoric. But really, the fear here is that before they're done, they will attempt to utterly destroy all of Ukraine, the infrastructure of all of Ukraine. Again, as Epimu says, state terrorism from Russia. Exactly. This is basically, at this point, it's transitioned. Early on in the war, we even saw, some slight attempt of the Russian forces to be precise and avoid some civilian casualties in the first maybe 48 hours, 40 to 72 hours. It was kind of the idea that they were going to try to make a precise, precision strikes against Ukraine's government. They were going to move in this blitzkrieg, take over the government, with very few civilian casualties. We clearly see it 100% different now. Again, they're directly targeting civilian infrastructure. It's about the infrastructure. It's about the housing. It's about the buildings. It's about causing as much damage as possible. Right? We've seen clear evidence of orders given by Russian commanders for Russian troops to fire on civilian residential buildings, not just the buildings themselves, but civilians themselves that they deem a threat, to fire directly on those civilians and these residential targets. We see direct evidence of them targeting power stations, water infrastructure, heating infrastructure. Utkin asks a very excellent question. Says, Nemico, do you think that the British will begin to escort grain shipments out of Odessa? Again, there's been a lot of talk about stuff like that over the past few weeks. All right. Russia's goal here is to not have that happen. They do not want that grain leaving Ukraine. They want that grain for themselves. They want, and if they can't have Odessa, they want to destroy those ports there. They want to destroy the ability for any of that grain, any of those exports, not just grain, but sunflowers. You have sunflower seeds. You have a lot of major exports, not just food exports. Again, but there's a lot on the line here. When it comes to these resources that are being fought over here, it's not just a war over ideology here, Russian ideology. It's not just a war over Russian security. They're directly waging a war over the infrastructure now. It's shifted. Okay, it's shifted. It's now at the point where they know if they can't get it, they need to destroy it so that it cannot be a threat to them in the future. All right. They also want to create that buffer zone between Russian territory and Ukrainian territory, because if Ukraine ever joins NATO, or if Ukraine moves to join NATO, they want to make sure that there is that buffer region between Russia and Ukraine. That's their primary goal at this point. Again, moving on here. 9 hours ago, a Russian cruise missile hit a residential house in Mykolaiv. We didn't get one post down, and we're seeing more evidence here, guys. Clearly, you can see this is a residential house hit by a cruise missile in Mykolaiv. Show you some pictures here of that damage. Absolutely destroyed that residential house. 8 hours ago, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban declares a wartime state of emergency immediately after his new government was installed. I know I spoke of this earlier. 7 hours ago, Russian troops have shelled Boyaro, Lezachi, and a few other regions in the Sumi region there. A few other locations in the Sumi region. I could show you the location here on the map. Territory that has been retaken by the Ukrainian forces. 6 hours ago, Russian aviation conducted airstrikes against civilian and military infrastructure in the Sumi region. Again, this came from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. They mentioned that in an evening report. 6 hours ago, another report here from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine saying Russian army shelled Tisakuni with artillery, conducted combat reconnaissance mission near Pasika, but suffered losses and withdrew. Again, the report was located here on the map, not too far from Izium. 6 hours ago, Russian aviation conducted airstrikes in Kramatorsk, Liman, Slavyansk. Again, in another report from the Ukraine Armed Forces. 6 hours ago, another Ukraine Armed Forces report here at Bivideni Bu direction. Russian troops shelled Ukrainian positions with mortars, MLRS, howitzers, conducted airstrikes near Mykolivka. Again, you can see where those reports were located here. As those Russian forces continue to push to creep westward. However, not making very much progress there. You can see territory that the Ukrainians have been able to take back in those areas. Six hours ago here, Russian army conducted airstrikes with assault and army aviation at Avdiivka and Kurakovi, Novopilivka, and Zaporizhia directions, shelled areas in a few different regions there with mortars and artillery. You can see where those were located here, not too far from Donetsk. 6 hours ago, at Bakhmut direction, Russian troops are on the offensive near Lipovi, Bilohorivka. You can see where they are located there. Again, as those Russian forces are looking to encircle this region here in and around Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, you can see them conducting this pincer movement, which they have tried many times in many different areas here. Again, remains to be seen if they're going to be able to pull that off there and cut off those Ukrainian forces that are in that area. 6 hours ago here, video of Russian Mi-28N and Ka-52 helicopters firing rockets near Toshkivka. Let's get that video up on screen for you guys now. I'm going to go ahead and make sure my desktop audio is coming in so we can watch this here. You can see this video here of them firing those rockets. You can hear the strikes occurring. You could see the helicopters there on screen. I could see a few of the smoke trails from those missiles being fired. Let's see if we can get a better view here. You can see there some flares being used, most likely to counter some Ukrainian anti-air systems. You can see them using those flares there. Again, those are to counter again, anti-aircraft systems. can see that helicopter flying very low there. Coming across the sky. Again, to avoid anti-aircraft systems, they fly low. And to avoid radar, I would imagine as well. Our last post from this evening, from 6 hours ago, a video reportedly of a Russian Su-25 aircraft firing rockets in the vicinity of Toshivka. You can see an image here on screen of that missile smoke trail. We're going to get that video up for you guys now. Oh wait, sorry. This is the that's the helicopter. Here's the video, and this is the same. This is the same individual. Yes, this is the same individual. Okay, so the same individual took both of these videos very shortly after each other. You can see here. Okay, so I'm trying to break down what we're seeing here. So it's reportedly a Russian Su-25 firing rockets. However, I think I'm seeing some anti-aircraft systems being fired there. Yeah, those are anti-air systems being fired. I see some flares there being fired. Okay. Wow. So I think I might have seen maybe some contrails from some anti-aircraft systems. I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell from that distance. You can see those flares being used as well. Not sure if those two aircraft went down or if they were just flying low there. Could be that they were trying to fly low there. Again, that footage coming from Toshkivka. We can get that up on the map here so I can show you where that was located. In the Lysychansk region. In that region around Lysychansk. Severodonetsk. We're in the east here, in the east of the country. But lots of activity has occurred over the past 24 to 48 hours. Let's go ahead and give it a quick refresh here. No new reports coming in. I know sometimes Live UA Map does get a little behind when it comes to these reports, especially later in the evening. So you said that video is only halfway on screen. Let me see if I can get that all the way up for you. There we go. We can watch this video here again, just so you guys can see. You can see those smoke trails there. You can see the Russian jets using flares there as well. Again, that concludes our open source reports from Live UA Map for this evening. We're going to switch back over to our newsroom now. We're going to switch over to kind of a little bit of a Q&A from our live chat. I'll answer a few questions and read off a few comments. Just really quickly like to thank everybody that's tuning in tonight. I see quite a few familiar faces in the live chat, and quite a few, more than usual actually, new faces in the chat tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this evening, to all of you. Happy Tuesday. I know I wish it could be under better circumstances, but happy Wednesday to those of you in Europe and elsewhere. Currently we're just coming on to the 9 o'clock hour here, PM, on the East Coast in the United States. 3 a.m. Ukraine time. Again, thank you, Jake Miller, so much for tuning in tonight. Mythical, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Kenders, I saw you in the chat there as well. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Big shout out to all of the channel members that are tuning in this evening, and Twitch subscribers as well. To all of you guys, huge shout out. Thank you so much for not only tuning back in, but contributing to the amazing discussions that are occurring in our live chats this evening. Appy, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Much appreciated. Always good to have our Scotsman tuning in. Got to get your mention in for tonight. Just Me, thank you so much for tuning in. He says, oh, we just had a shooting earlier. That's why he spoke. Are you referring to, I believe Biden gave an address, if I'm not, President of the United States, President Joe Biden, I believe he gave a speech a little while ago. I did not see that since I was giving the report during that speech. However, I'll be looking into that afterwards. Again, our hearts go out to all the victims there in that shooting that occurred earlier today. Yeah, for those of you that missed tonight's report, we will be uploading it to our YouTube channel as usual, youtube.com/Nemico Network. It does take a few hours to get the report up live. You can also scroll back in the live stream if you want to view it that way, or you can wait for the video to go live. Throw11111 says, I've heard that people that are from Ukraine or have family in Ukraine that are living within Russian borders, if they attempt to go back to Ukraine, they could possibly be sentenced to 15 years in prison for treason. Have you heard anything about this? I have not heard anything about that. No, I have heard a lot of reports of people getting arrested. For speaking out against the government, protesting. We've heard a lot of those reports. We've also heard reports of desertion, military desertion, occurring amongst the Russian ranks. However, I have not heard any reports of that directly yet. However, I will look into that. Tony Wilson says, great show. Thank you so much, Tony, for tuning in this evening. Thank you for stopping by, taking some time out of your day to get updated here on what's going on in the world. Jack MC says, thank you, Nemico. Thank you, Jack. As always, glad to have you back and tuning in this evening. 777 Militia says, I'm thankful for all the great people that make this possible. Thanks, Nemico and Chad. Thank you so much, 777 Militia. Again, I had a 3-day weekend there. We were having some connection issues, and we're actually going to be having a short reporting week this week. I'm not going to be bringing you reports Thursday or Friday, as well as Monday and Tuesday. We're going to be off for the Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S. However, if any major events do occur, I am on call to bring you guys those reports, and our 24/7 Ukraine Situation Room cam stream will be up that entire time as well. But we will be bringing you guys a report tomorrow for Wednesday, and I'm hoping to make it a good one for tomorrow to make up for our lack of reports this week. But then next week we'll be back. We'll be back at it again. Again, thank you to everybody for bearing with us here. Again, I've been making improvements to the stream here incrementally. As issues arise, we try to do our best to mitigate those. Again, I've been trying to improve both my format here and also how I deliver it to you guys as well. I know I've been trying to make improvements in the pronunciation department for quite a while now, trying to get better at pronouncing some of those Ukrainian and Russian words for those town names and regions. Jake Miller says, Nemico, I have to get my mind off of today's event in Texas. Yep. I'm not covering domestic stuff right now. I've been, again, strictly covering what's going on in Ukraine and kind of that broader conflict there. Again, our hearts do go out to everybody that was a victim in that shooting that occurred today. Very unfortunate turn of events that occurred there this evening. Speedy Squirrel, thank you so much for tuning in. Glad to have you back. Barbara says, only half here in South Texas. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Again, I hope everybody is doing okay this evening. Again, with given the events that have occurred, not just today, but all week. It's been definitely a hard week in many different areas of the world. Utkin says, right on, Nemico, thank you for all the hard work. Thank you so much, Utkin, for tuning back in. Glad to see you. Michelle Welch, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Shameless Senpai says, think the UN will just send in peacekeeping forces? I think that's very unlikely. I know a few people have asked me that question before. I don't think that is likely at all, no. Hugo, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Says, Nemico, hey man, checking in from Los Angeles. Thank you so much, Hugo, for tuning in tonight. Glad to see you. Terry West says, awesome report, Nemico. Thank you again. I tried to do my best at getting everybody kind of caught up on what happened over the weekend. There's been a lot of news. You got what occurred in Hungary. You have the ramping up of the fighting in the east. You have all of the geopolitical shifts, geopolitical moves that have been happening over the past 3 to 5 days or so. There's been a lot. It's been a very busy news week, and there was a lot I had to condense down into tonight's report. As Mimi says, even if it's a mini report, sometimes there's a lot happening at the moment. Yes, so I do like to, again, hop on occasionally for those mini reports kind of at random, especially when things are breaking, when we're getting breaking news in, or sometimes if I feel like there's something that we should analyze, maybe do a deep dive on. I do hop in at random for those occasionally. Keep an eye on the announcements in the Discord channel and over on the YouTube channel. Best places to get updated as to what is going on and when we're going to be going live for those events, for those reports. Kendra says, have a good long weekend, Nemico. Yep, we will. Again, we'll be back here tomorrow for Wednesday's nightly report. I might also be able to get one in Thursday. I've been thinking about, I'm going to try to cram one in Thursday evening as well, if I can. Again, we are going to be taking off Friday and then Monday and then possibly as well Tuesday, but I'll keep you guys posted on that as well for the Memorial Day weekend here in the States. I believe Canada also celebrates a similar day around this time. I believe it's Victoria Day or something like that. I'm not a Canadian, so don't quote me on that. But I think they have an equivalent holiday, if I'm not mistaken, that they're also celebrating this week. Doom Pie coming in clutch with tonight's weather forecast out of Kiev. 0500, 11 degrees C. Clear skies, wind southwest 12 kilometers an hour. Sunrise 0558, sunset 2052. Thank you so much, Doom Pie, for that, both almanac and weather forecast for Ukraine. As always, you're on the ball with those. Thank you so much. Tony Wilson, with an excellent question, says, what are the odds that Boris Johnson rides into the Black Sea with a fleet of British destroyers? I think at this time, the odds are very slim. As this food crisis increases, as this conflict possibly looks to branch out into other regions here. Again, we've talked about Moldova. Conflict is ongoing in areas bordering Russia as well, or areas bordering Ukraine in Russian territory. We've seen strikes as well. So this is not just a war happening in Ukraine. This is a war happening in a few different regions, not to mention across the Black Sea as well. Just Me says, any info on China's drama yet? Will you be following that too at Nemico Network? You can bet I will. Yes, I will be following that. I think, again, I'm not a reporter and a journalist. I like to, I like to think I am, but I'm not going to be covering everything, every little news story here. It's mainly not only things that interest me. Ukraine interests me. Again, I've been following Ukraine since 2014, but it's also things that can affect all of us. All right, things that will affect all of us. Major world events is my primary focus when it comes to reporting for you guys. Again, leading to military journalism and major events that are occurring in and around that. So you have the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, arguably the Russian-NATO conflict here, this proxy conflict that is occurring here, and then you also have on the other side of the spectrum, you have China and their actions in the South Pacific and what's going, how that's going to interact with the U.S. You also have North Korea. You have events in the Middle East as well. Those are all things, again, that affect us all on a global scale, and so those are things that I want to bring you guys information on. Are things that affect us globally and affect all of my viewers. Those are the primary focus here for our reports. Right now, mainly being Ukraine and the war that is occurring there. As Throw1111 says, quote, things that will change our daily lives. Yes, exactly. It's about things that will change our daily lives. I'm not about reporting on political things, domestic issues, things like that. I'm all about reporting on things that are going to affect us all moving forward. Major world events, things like that. Again, thank you to everybody that tuned in for tonight's report. To all of you that tuned in tonight, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to get notified when we have future streams or videos. If you haven't already, javelin the like button. Best way to get the algorithm's attention and get this information out to more eyes and ears. New reports, guys, weekdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 3 a.m. Ukraine time. The cam streams, the Situation Room information data / cam stream is up 24/7, constantly making changes to that to improve that format for you guys. We'll be switching over to that when this report is done. Also be uploading this report to our YouTube channel, again, as usual, youtube.com/Nemico Network. So for those of you that missed it, you can swing over there to watch the full report on the YouTube channel later. To all of my Twitch viewers, thank you guys so much for tuning in this evening. All of you on Twitch, you guys are awesome. Excellent community over there. And if you haven't already, hit that follow button. Best way to get notified when new Twitch streams go live. If you are looking for any of our sources or links to any of the reports that we've been talking about, any of our cams, any of that stuff, you can find that stuff in the description below this video, below this stream. If you can't find it there, you can find it over on our Discord server. That's discord.gg/Nemico. Probably the best place, the best resource on the internet, still to this day, for getting up-to-date, real-time information on what's going on in this Ukrainian-Russian conflict. I know since the wars began, there's been a little bit of slowdown. A lot of people, again, this war's kind of moved into a grind, all right? There was a lot of hype in the first few months there, all right? Everybody was like, what's going on? What is happening here? I need to understand. People were online 24/7, waiting for something major to happen, thinking this was going to conclude itself. This is a long haul, okay? This is a long grinding war that we're seeing here. So again, we make strides to, again, make sure that as this grinds on and as we go into the future, that we will constantly have information, a flow of information, a flow of reporting coming to you guys, and we can keep, again, the content coming to you. Not just about what's going on in Ukraine here, but I have other content as well coming down the pipeline. A bunch of videos and stuff that we've been working on in the background, not just Ukraine war related, but some other stuff moving into the future here. Again, my channel here is not just Ukraine war related. It's a little bit of everything, okay? And so again, I'm really excited to be bringing you guys some of that stuff here coming down the road here in the future. Rate Man, thank you so much for subscribing over there on Twitch. Miss Chris, thank you so much for cheering those bits. To everybody that supports us, thank you guys so much for the continued support and for tuning in. Until next time, everybody, you have been watching Nemico Network.
Something that will change our daily lives, that will change history.